to empower people with not just the philosophical tools, but the inspiration to break free from the system.
Welcome to the flagship Lions of Liberty podcast, your weekly dose of education, inspiration, and real-world application from the top minds in the liberty movement.
If you want liberty, we need to be better leaders, better husbands, better fathers, better friends, better businessmen. We need to be better people.
Here's your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Marc Clair.
Live long and live free.
All right, kitty cats, with me today is a gentleman I've gotten to know over the last year or so pretty well, mostly through his podcast, which is called Yer Talkin Over Me. I'm pleased to welcome Adam Patrick. Adam, are you ready to roar?
Rawr.
All right, Adam, I had a feeling you would be. You're actually a member of the Pride as well, so you're roaring with us all the time here. And
And I got my mug.
Yeah. What's that?
And I got my mug.
Oh, nice. All right, so you're legit. You're not just one of those, those paper fans that just
Yeah, we're not playing
signs
around.
up to say, and then but you walk the walk and drink the drink. It's good to see. So Adam, we can kind of start things wherever it makes the most sense for you. I've really been enjoying your interviews and your approach to, I say, these ideas. We'll talk about what these ideas exactly are, but you've definitely, I'd say, you've at least journeyed through libertarianism, if nothing else, I would say. So, but yeah, I'll let you take it away from wherever you think makes the most sense for you. Where do you want to begin your journey? Where's the story of Adam Patrick begin, other than through starry looks in your parents' eyes?
Well, those starry looks kind of led to a pretty good upbringing, man. I mean, growing up in the 80s and 90s, I feel like those of us who were between the ages of like 35 and 45, we have this 1 foot in the analog age and 1 foot in the digital age that kind of gives a good amount of perspective that helps us sort of pull back and look at the world a certain way. So yeah, I'm growing up playing in the dirt, playing sports, but we also had basically a library in my house because my father was a tenured humanities professor. So I read a lot and was very creative in my free time, as well as like being an actual child who like stayed out late in the dark and got dirty. So I always considered myself kind of like I wouldn't have known what the word anarchist was growing up, but definitely like fuck authority. Don't tell me what to do. Like terrible student. Like the only reason I even graduated high school is because my SATs were like in the 1500s, but I barely went. And it was more about smoking weed and chilling with my friends or whatever. And, and then, 9/11 happened, and I happened to be dating somebody who was in the military. She was actually in basic training when 9/11 happened. And my impetus for joining the military was just, well, it seems like something we could do to be together now that clearly we're going to be at war rather than peacetime. And so I just did that as a way to make money and be with her. And man, was that like an interesting experience that we probably don't have a lot of time to get into, but it really left me with a really bad taste in my mouth for the state and war and just awful bureaucracy and sociopathic murderers. And so I started reading a little bit of economics in there. I ended up getting out and getting my degree in economics from South Florida, University of South Florida. And that, I don't remember if it was Thomas Sowell that got me into looking up kind of libertarian ideas, but definitely around that 2007 time, I was one of the Ron Paul guys. I saw him, in those debates, lambasting Rudy Giuliani, and really started to like define what my worldview was going to be off of that. And read Rothbard, read Mises, read Hayek, and then really didn't do anything else with those ideas until 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, right? It would spend a lot of time on social media talking.
What happened around that time?
This weird thing. There was like this little bug, I guess, a germ. I really don't know how to explain it. I probably no one's ever heard of it.
The sniffles.
Yeah, I read about it in the newspaper, and it's kind of an obscure thing. But yeah, it's I guess I'd always kind of, because I was owning and operating bars and restaurants for the whole time, basically between getting out of the military and now. It didn't really leave me a lot of time to explore ideas other than going on like Facebook here and there and maybe reading something occasionally. So I didn't really work through what libertarianism was to me, really. And then, COVID was like that. My restaurant got shut down. My industry got shut down. Everybody around me started acting like a crazy person. And that's kind of what led me to, well, I have all this free time. Let me just start a podcast and start talking to people. And I didn't even know this was really a thing. Like I knew you existed, Jason Jason Stapleton and Dave Smith and Tom Woods. And I think I found Pete Quinones probably either through you or through Dave. And Pete had on Curtis Yarvin and Vin Armani. And all of these ideas just started going off in my head. And I'm like, I have to talk to people about this. How do I talk to people about this? And so I just started a show and figured, well, I don't know anybody in the Liberty space really. So I'll talk to restaurant people and see what they have to say about this, because those are my people. And then slowly I started coming on Twitter and meeting people and, hey, do you want to have a conversation? Would you like to have a conversation? And, I didn't know them. They didn't know me, but we started kind of building up a rapport, and I started to really work through these ideas in real time. And well, that's been a ride.
I think that's safe to say.
Yeah,
if
man.
you build it, they will speak. That's pretty much how it works. It's not people like, well, I don't know anybody. I can't start a podcast. How are people going to talk to me? You just do it. And then you say you have a podcast, and then they go, oh, this guy has a podcast. Sure. I'll talk to him. It's actually that simple.
Yeah. And I had Twitter since like 2012, but I've never used it. I mean, it would like for a while it updated just from my Facebook post. It would just auto update, and then it just stopped doing that. So really my only interactions on Twitter were started maybe like a year and a half ago. And I realized I didn't really know how to use that very well either. So it's been a very interesting learning experience to be immersed in this community and kind of see the divides and the splits of like ideology or theory versus praxis, religion versus atheism, LP versus, lowercase L libertarians, like really seeing all of these dynamics happening in real time. It's been a absolutely weird learning experience, but I think that's helped me kind of work through my ideas. So I appreciate everybody, even if we don't talk anymore. I appreciate your help through that. And hopefully I've been able to say something of value to people. I think I have, and it'll be weird, 18 months from now to see where these ideas go. I'm kind of excited for that journey.
Yeah, that's what I really do enjoy about your approach and what I enjoy about listening to your interviews, because, and let's be honest, maybe I'm partially responsible for this, but a lot of like quote unquote libertarian shows, I know you don't brand yourself in that way at all, but they've gotten into this rut of just sort of repeating the same mantras, repeating the same things over and over. I will not exclude Lions of Liberty from that, at least up until a year and a half or so ago, I would say. But I mean, if you're not at least re-examining your worldview after the last year and a half, at least your approach to life, your approach to politics, your approach to communication, to philosophy, then I don't know what to say. And that's what I really enjoy about your show, because you can tell it really is like a real-time journey through the mind of Adam Patrick. I'm curious how you came up with the name, because I was talking to you off air the other week, and now I literally, like, I have this crazy brain that is always trying to fire off, and it's difficult for me in conversations, and I do this a lot, and I have to apologize to people a lot. I do talk over people. That's like a thing I do. And when I'm not talking over someone, like even when you were speaking, telling us your whole story a few minutes ago, I had to stop myself a number of times. Like, no, don't speak. Let the man speak. And this is something I've struggled with all throughout my career, quote unquote, as a podcaster, is having to hold myself back and stop myself from talking over people. So I'm just kind of curious where the name of the podcast came from.
Well, there's two really obvious questions I always expected people to ask me especially when they see me on the video, and that's one of them. And no one's ever asked me that question.
See, I'm here for the basic bitch questions.
I've been waiting for that for a year and a half, and no one's ever asked me. So the genesis of that was my ex-girlfriend used to say that to me all the time.
Oh,
she used
there
to,
you go. So
you're talking over me. You're always talking over me. Stop talking over me. And I thought it was, I would always chuckle, because what does that even mean? Sure, I guess that's a thing, but like she also did it. Like other people
actually has the right to speak at any one moment. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just it's something somebody says when they don't really have anything better to say. So I took it as kind of a joke, but I also realized that, in an ironic way, we don't do that on the show. Like we always have very like cordial conversations and really try to work through things together. And so the third thing is the way I worded it. It makes it kind of hard to find organically, which means that people kind of have to put in some effort to track it down.
Huh.
You know, if I did
That's purposeful.
yeah, if I did like Liberty with Adam, it's really easy. You know, I've had people say like I've spelled your show wrong 100 times. I can't find it anywhere.
Like good, you got to work.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little gatekeeping. You know, like you have to work for it a little bit, because I know I don't want 100,000 people listening to the show, because that means it's probably terrible. You know, so I mean, for me anyway, not that hating anybody else who has that many listeners, but I don't want that. So yeah,
for the most part, to appeal to a mass audience, you have to speak and relate ideas in a mass audience way. And if you really want to have deep, interesting conversations, you really do have to niche down into and to speak certain ways and to explore subjects in certain ways that just aren't gonna, at least for what's gonna interest me, that stuff's not gonna appeal to a mass audience, at least not at this stage, and not where we are in this era.
Yeah, and I totally get why people do it. You know, not everybody can be a Joe Rogan. He's very, very specific in what he does. But the last thing I want to do is be a Tim Pool. And Tim Pool's very successful at what he does. And maybe if I needed money, maybe I would go that route. But it's just, this is really more of an intellectual hobby for me. And I, you know, diluting that with like a bunch of bad ideas isn't going to help me or the people listening to the show. So yeah, absolutely.
All right, now you've been kind of I don't know, how would you say it, scorched earth lately? I would say one way to put it on Twitter, a little bit, maybe not scorched, maybe just singeing the earth a little bit, but I mean, you've been pretty fired up out there. I think it's safe to say, and I'm not going to go on into any specifics, but I think it's clear that you have maybe gotten fed up with a lot of what a lot of libertarians are out there saying, and a lot of people's approach to these concepts. So I'm just want to kind of dive into, again, wherever it makes the most sense for you to start. When did the cracks in the armor of the libertarian philosophy, or the libertarian approach, whichever one you might say, when did those start to appear for you? And when did you start to think, well, maybe all those things I believed over the last 10 years, either I need to re-examine them, or I need to look at things in a different way? Like, you know, how did that actually play out? Guide me through the journey here.
Well, you know, I think I always had a problem with libertarianism in some respects. I thought it was a me problem, not a libertarianism problem. So when I would, you know, in the early 2000 teens, when I would go on Facebook, and even in the Jason Stapleton Facebook group, which was kind of like the genesis of this, I would see these minarchist versus anarchist arguments, and I would find myself, I don't want to say siding with the minarchists, but kind of seeing something there that was interesting to me, but I felt like they were coming at the argument for the wrong reasons. You know, almost saying like not understanding the other side of it. And I didn't really know why that was. I thought it was just me. Like, I'm not getting it. And so like the people I would talk to, I'd be like, just convince me of anarchism, convince me of voluntarism. Like, you know, why am I still kind of sympathetic to the minarchist point of view? Because I don't think it's for the same reason they are. And you know, I only have so much time to kind of explore that. And that group got a little messy. And, you know, I just decided
it got so messy that he shut the thing down. I was in that group as well.
Which is the best. I mean, so many of us were too. And so when I had the opportunity to kind of jump into Twitter and meet people, I guess I was still kind of exploring those ideas as well. And some people are really, really into that, really into hardcore philosophy and like dissecting ideas down, and even looking at religion exegetically, or, you know, not blind faith, but just looking at the reason for things. Like, I really want to explore these things in depth. And I found myself just unfortunately gravitating away from people who had no interest in doing that. And probably the best way to do that would have been to just silently kind of leave, you know, but that wasn't exactly the case. So, I mean, whatever, that maybe getting angry and like calling people out isn't the best thing to do, but you know,
it's the nature of social media in many ways, and it happens to even those of us who are aware of it, even those of us who might say, oh, social media is not the best, because, you know, people tend to fire off emotionally, and then I look at some of my tweets, I'm like, all right, well, I guess I do that too sometimes.
I would say I probably got a little bit too deeply involved with a particular community that I didn't vet very well, and that's not a knock on them. It's more of a knock on me for not realizing kind of that wasn't where I belonged, and not allowing myself to get so deep into it. So it just kind of came to a head where I said, you know, this is going to be a divorce. I'm going to go my way, you're going to go your way, and kind of leave it there. And what expedited that was realizing that people were just blocking me on Twitter randomly. And I was like, all right, well, I guess this is before I thought I was saying anything really incendiary. I'm just making points about my ideas. And then, I heard somebody kind of just attack post-libertarianism or whatever the fuck that means. And I just went, all right, enough with this, fucking enough with this. Like, let's just put an end to it right now. I said something on Twitter to somebody, nothing personal, just, I don't like what you did. And that just sealed the deal. So now I don't have to see any of that anymore. And my life is much more beautiful for it. And, they can do what they do and I'll do what I do, and everybody's happy.
There is this interesting phenomenon in the libertarian community, if you want to call it that, or probably in any community that has a bunch of people who are very zealous about their ideas, overzealous, you might say. Again, including myself for much of my time in this realm here, where if you get involved in the community, you start to discuss the ideas, and then if you start to question certain aspects of things, not even going against them, just questioning, just starting to bring in new ideas, starting to question certain concepts, saying, is this the right approach? Is that the right approach? Anybody who is wedded to that approach or that particular idea that you're not even necessarily criticizing fully, but even, again, just questioning, you start to see people lash out and kind of attack you. I'm saying you generically, I speak of anybody who this happens with, to sort of attack you as an apostate, as almost like a traitor in it. And you can see it's in a very, in the same way, I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but it reminds me of the way that, like the way we see COVID people attack each other, the way we see people attack each other over vaccines. It's maybe not as extreme, but it's the same thing. It's the same basic thing. It's you're not in my group. You said you were in my group, but now you're speaking out. You're speaking out against the religion. You're speaking out against the doctrination. So now we have to reject you. Now we have to attack you, because to engage in some kind of, dialogue would give at least some kind of legitimacy, or at least suggest that maybe there's something worth discussing here, and we just can't have that because it's a doctrine. It's not necessarily a place where you're able to really discuss ideas, and that's something that I've always tried to do that on my show, is discuss ideas in a very open way. But the fact is, I was am, I don't know, very hardcore about my ideas too, so I probably exhibited some of those qualities along the road as well. So I never exclude myself from these criticisms that I see of the movement or community or what have you. But I mean, do you get that feeling that if you were maybe a progressive or a conservative or something, if you never kind of even dabbled in the libertarian circles, I don't think you wouldn't face the blocks. They would just tweet back and forth with you. It's you need to be shunned and rejected when you've been in the community, and then you become sort of a traitor, in so to speak.
Well, yeah, and maybe capitalize on that too, because in that, being ostracized from a particular group, you actually might find a better group, which I believe I have, of people who, they may not agree with everything that I'm saying or you're saying, but at least they're coming at it in good faith and having a conversation, because I don't know if I'm right. I'm just saying things. But if you're going to come at me and you'd be like, oh, that's just sophistry, or what are you're just rebranding statism. I'm like, well, what does that bring to the conversation? Why are you here? What are you contributing to me and my life with that comment? Just go away. There's no reason for it. So I think I'm finding the people who want to have bigger conversations and distancing myself from those who just want to be snippy. Right. And the snippiness, I think, just comes from a place of insecurity where I'm going to generalize this, and it's a working thesis, so I guess time will tell if it's true or not. I feel like the people who have like real life friends tend to not do that, right? And the people who found their only group of friends in Liberty Twitter tend to do it more, right? So I don't want to say that's everybody, because it surely isn't.
Cue the comments. I have real life friends. Why are you talking about me?
Yeah, like there's nothing about the Liberty community that is anything more than one of many communities that I'm part of, and I'm grateful to be here. I'm thankful to be here. I appreciate everything that everyone has helped me learn over at least the last year and a half, if not the last 15. But it's just one of many things I do, right? My identity is not wrapped up in libertarianism or the liberty community. That to me is a huge trap, because that's when you start to become this religious ideologue that will, go to battle like Joan of Arc for, your ideas or whatever. And a lot of those ideas are really bad ideas. Like, they're just not well thought through ideas. And because if they were, we wouldn't have gone through the past 18 months. And that's really been kind of my story, is in the marketplace of ideas, people have resoundingly chosen the opposite of your ideas. Not you, but the king's you. Libertarianism had its time on my show. I gave it a full year and a half to have conversations with libertarians, people in the Libertarian Party, folks who were like adamantly involved in politics, and even close friends of mine, sell me on this, work me through this. And they they just couldn't sell me. And if they can't sell me and I'm already amenable to it, well, let's look at the, 330 million people in the United States, and you can just see why these ideas don't work. And if they don't work, let's talk about why. Because the way I see it, there's a huge difference between the concepts of individual liberty and economic freedom and libertarianism, right? That's a big difference. If you want the result or the goal of your life's work to be individual liberty and economic freedom, it might very well be that libertarianism is not the avenue to take to get there. And let's have that conversation and figure out how to get the results, not just the ideology that claims to get the results, but clearly fails every time it's implemented, right?
All right, guys, I got to take a quick time out to tell you about our newest sponsors, Paloma Verde CBD. I am so excited about this sponsorship for a number of reasons. One, CBD is a freaking miracle. CBD has helped me with so many things in life, from insomnia to joint and muscle issues. I'm old, guys. I just hit 40 last year. I'm almost 41. Almost 40 freaking one. I can use CBD. It really helps me out a lot. And Vanessa and Carlos Abelar, who run this company, Paloma Verde, they are an awesome libertarian couple, the kind of couple you want to support in life, just like you want to support this podcast. Well, guess what? When you purchase your CBD from Paloma Verde over at palomaverdecbd.com, you get to do it all. You get to support this amazing family. You get to support my Latin American community. Of course, I'm married into a Mexican family, so I'm essentially Latin American at this point as well. You get to support the Latin American community, and you also get an amazing product. Not only all of that, you get to support this podcast at the same time. We, of course, get a kickback from these sales, and you get a huge discount by using our discount code. That discount code is ROAR, ROAR. Use that discount code at checkout, and you're going to get 25% off your order. 25 freaking percent off your order. And they have awesome stuff. Like I said, my favorites, I have them right here, actually. These premium CBD gummies. These are legit, and I'm not kidding. The only bad part about these gummies is that they're so delicious that I kind of just want to eat them all at once, and you really don't need to eat all that CBD at once. The gummies are delicious. These amazing salves they have. I tried one of these salves on my neck. I got a neck issue, guys. My neck's always sore, always hurting me. This salve, it is freaking magic, the salve that I use. You got to check out these products. As I choke on the CBD gummy, check it all out. PalomaVerdeCBD.com. Do not forget to use discount code ROAR for 25% off your order. It does have to be an order over $75, but guess what? You also get free shipping over $75. So you're going to want to do it. Check it out. PalomaVerdeCBD.com. Discount code ROAR. Let's break that down a little bit then. There's almost definitely there are people listening, watching this that are thinking, well, what's this guy talking about? Like, I want individual liberty. I want economic freedom. And that's what libertarianism is. That's what libertarianism supports philosophically. So where's the disconnect here? Why are they wrong? Or what is the problem with either the philosophy? Is it the philosophy of libertarianism that you say is flawed? Or would it be the approach of libertarianism? Or maybe both. Of libertarians, I should say.
Well, I guess it really depends on the person, so I guess my differentiation is, are you more concerned with being a libertarian, or are you more concerned with achieving individual liberty and economic freedom? And one of those is results oriented, right? And the other one is just an identity that you have for yourself. And, you can say you're a libertarian, you can say I don't hurt people and take their stuff, but, do you actually have liberty? Have you actually achieved what you would call liberty in your life? It's like if you meet a 800-pound, slob that's got a YouTube channel about fitness, and they're going to be like, well, I can preach all the principles of fitness, right? But you're a slob and you're fat and you're probably going to die really soon. Like, why would I listen to you if you haven't shown me proof of the fact that you can actually do the things you're talking about? Sure, you can, if I wasn't looking at the screen, I might think you were a total, CrossFitter or something. But what you're showing me, that person on YouTube, is that you're not actually living what you're talking about. You might be living it kind of, but I don't know what that means. So if you're trying to achieve something, you have to achieve it for yourself first, and that's a lot of work. So it's just easier to conform to kind of this religious libertarian ideology that you can always fall back to as a crutch for just being morally consistent, right? You say, well, everything I say is consistent, taxation is theft, blah, 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 all this stuff, but you're not doing anything about it, really. So what does it mean? Like Pete says, you'll be the most consistent libertarian on the privately owned boxcar, right? What does that even mean? So I think that can be interpreted as kind of like I don't know what I'm talking about. But the reason I feel like I do is because that was me for 15 years. I did that for 15 years, that exact thing. And then what bothered me so much about when the lockdowns came in March of 2020, I went, man, I've owned and operated 4 concepts. I've done consulting work. I've had side hustles. How in the world is this affecting me? How is it possible right now that this is affecting my life? It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be affecting my life. How did I let this happen? And I said to myself that this will never happen to me again. If a lockdown comes or a vaccine mandate or a passport or mask mandates, I'm going to get to a position where this is not going to affect my life ever again. And that has been kind of the genesis of me kind of questioning a lot of other people's belief, because I did that. I literally didn't live the stuff I was talking about. And I can't do that anymore. And I don't want to say that I'm going to call people out, because everybody's got their own journey. So I'm not going to call someone an asshole for doing the asshole shit that I did for a decade and a half. But I think it just needs to be brought up again and again and again, because this type of action is how you would actually achieve individual liberty and economic freedom. And then once you do that for yourself, then you can help other people do it. And Jason Stapleton, I'll just think of a name, is a great example of that. There's a reason why I'm in his Nomad Network. There's a reason why I give him money, right? Because he's proven to me that he can deliver results, because he's done it for himself. That is an enormous advantage over, somebody working minimum wage at Best Buy trying to tell me that I should read more Rothbard. And then I find out, that 7 tweets later that they've never even read Rothbard. So
to make it worse, they haven't even actually read it.
Or they read half of Anatomy of the State, which is 100 pages,
which is an essay.
Yeah, an essay. So yeah, I guess that's, I don't know. Did that kind of clear it up a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I think I went through something somewhat similar when the lockdown started, and the job that I never even thought twice about, because it always came easy to me, and I never really questioned whether I'd be able to do it and make money if I chose or not to. Suddenly, I wasn't allowed to work at that job. Suddenly, I had some other income sources that I've been working on, but not so much. I mean, not compared to even now. And I really had that revelation. Here I am. I'm the Lion of Liberty. I've been talking about this stuff, this philosophy, for years. And it was around that time that I not only started to change my inner thought process about how to approach life. How am I going to sit here? Because it's easy. Like you said, it's easy to talk. It's so easy to start a podcast. I bought a microphone and I was done. I mean, it's one of the easiest things to do nowadays, to start a podcast. So that's not hard. That's not hard for me to take a microphone and talk about these ideas and talk about how the world should be, talk about how life should be. But if I don't have that same freedom, then who the fuck am I to be saying this stuff? And this is what was going through my head. And I was thinking, I in the blink of an eye, I lost my entire income. I lost my own freedom, and which means I never really had the freedom. That's what it really means, is that I never had it. If someone can just take it away that easily, I didn't really have it. And that really changed my approach in life. It started me really taking a lot of things that I've thought to myself, oh, I should do this someday. I'm very much a procrastinator in life. I'm someone, it took me 6 months to start this podcast after I decided to start the podcast, just because I overthink and I think, and then I rethink the other thing I thought. So I've definitely spent time doing that during the pandemic as well. But that was when I first started to really, really push myself and say, okay, you've been sitting here talking out of your ass for 8 years here. Maybe it's time to take some actions. And I've definitely taken more actions in my personal life to try to make myself a lot more independent, to the point where now I'm about to leave the country, and I don't really have everything planned out, but I'm not really worried about it because I know I'm going to make it. And I know that the few things I put in motion, I'm going to snowball those even more. And nothing's going to hold me back from this. And I've also tried to change my approach on the show as well, to really talk to more people who've actually done things, who've actually given themselves more freedom as well. I mean, we were just talking before the show. I think that was just in the pre-show chat. The stuff all starts to kind of merge for me, but you are actually about to exit the restaurant and bar industry, because you've done the same thing, because you focused on finding yourself, not to steal a phrase from John Odermatt, but finding freedom for yourself in life. So maybe you can detail that a little bit, like the actions you've actually taken in your own life, and maybe we can get back to nitpicking libertarianism a little bit after that.
Sure. I mean, I never really, I guess I always just assumed the restaurant industry would be kind of there for me. Like it's like everybody does. It's something that you never think is going to go away. I just wanted to, I always set a goal of kind of retiring from that by 40, because I just felt like I'd accomplished all of the goals I set for myself. I'd done everything on the checklist, and I didn't know what the next journey was going to, or the next step in the journey was going to be, because I set this goal years and years and years ago. But I'd always had multiple side hustles going on. I assumed one of those would take off. Like I had a dog walking business for a while that paid like half of my income, or I mean, half of my bills, selling CBD. Like I've done a lot of various side hustles. And I just assume, one of those will take off, or maybe I'll do all of them. But, or maybe I'll buy a little coffee shop in Florida or something and let somebody else run it, with the savings I have built up, or some Bitcoin revenue. But a lot of those side hustles were kind of beaten down by COVID too. It realigned the market so drastically that I started just kind of looking around for anybody I could connect with that might have an opportunity. And just having met and networked with thousands of people over 17 years in this industry, 16 years in this industry, kind of calling in some favors. Like, remember that time you offered me the thing in 2012 and I didn't want to do it? And I ended up actually kind of inking a deal with a buddy of mine who's a headhunter for C-level executives in the tech space, kind of matching clients to people looking for work. And that's a completely mobile income job. It's about 4 to 5 months to really knuckle down and kind of learn, because I know how to do the headhunting because I've done that before for the restaurant industry. I don't really know the tech space that well. So it's learning the terminology, learning how the PC ways that they kind of market their job titles, and then do that. Because once I nail that down, I can do that from anywhere. And it's livable money plus. And that's really cool. Like I find that when I really tune my energy, it sounds super new age, but tune my energy to my purpose.
When you align your chakras just right.
There's something really to that though, isn't there? When you really,
I know. Yeah. I say it mockingly, but I also kind of fully believe it.
I know it's so corny, but it's so true that everything kind of just flows. And this was a guy who'd been trying to get me to work with him for a very, very long time. And I just said, I don't really know. Restaurant's my thing. And it just all landed in my lap at once. And I'm really excited for that. I get to do it from anywhere on the planet I want. And so my new goal, this is a pretty ambitious one, but my new goal within 5 years is to own my own jet or plane. I mean,
now that's a goal,
but like, I want to be able to fly wherever I want at any time. Like that's my new 5-year goal. So but I do have to kind of make the point that it doesn't end there for me. I mean, I do want to still see other people also achieve individual liberty and economic freedom. I don't quite yet know how to do that other than just sharing my story with people or the story with people. But I start to see more and more folks kind of waking up to wanting to achieve something in their own life. And I'll get a lot of texts and DMs and stuff from like, what do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? I'm like, well, maybe I'm not the best resource for that. Let me put you in touch with, some friends of mine who are a little bit further along the path, and maybe they can guide you and I can kind of work with you too. I don't want to see anyone affected by these draconian lockdowns and government tyranny, or even corporate tyranny, which is probably worse at this point. So there's still a lot of work to do there, but I don't think a good place to start is with people who haven't recognized the problem like you and I have, and many others have. Like, you have to kind of get there first, because it's much easier to talk to those people than it is those who are still kind of stuck in 2018 and they've just dug their heels in and they refuse to move. I think we kind of have to leave them behind, which is unfortunate, but whatever. I mean, it's all about individualism, right?
So much of what you're talking about really does come down to this idea of building community. I mean, like, all these people that you've connected with over the years, they reach out to you maybe because they feel you're a part of their community, however that might be defined. This guy that, helped you end up getting this job that lets you be more free now, that was part of your community building. And, it reminds me of our friend Rachel Tobias sent us, who you just had a great interview with, by the way, on your show, sent out a clip to us yesterday from Terrence McKenna, where he was talking about how, especially now in this new age, this is obviously before he passed away, with all this technology. I mean, now there's no reason for anyone to be lonely or to feel lonely, because we can, no matter what our interest is, no matter what we want to achieve, no matter what we want to do in life, there are billions of people on this planet that we can connect with about those things. And that's very much in some ways what podcasting has become. I mean, for me, like, so much of the Lions of Liberty community and the people I've connected with, I mean, 30 years ago, I would never know any of these people. I would never even, my community would just be whoever I happened to live near and who happened to associate with in whatever I did in life, whatever job I happened to go to. But now we can really put ourselves out there and connect with whoever our energy draws them to get a little new agey again. Whoever feels the connection, whoever feels the vibration can go find each other. And I think the way forward, no matter if it's a physical community, which I think in many ways it's going to have to be as well. I think we're going to have to sort of congregate together physically in actual neighborhoods that we sort of take over to really, achieve more actual liberty in our sort of physical material lives. But at the same time, there's also that need to connect with people of like-minded beliefs and like-minded wants and desires. And we're able to do that now. And I think the more we can put this vibe out there, the energy out there, and the more we can attract our own community to ourselves, the more, ironically enough, by collectivizing ourselves with others, that's how we're going to be able to achieve individual liberty for ourselves. And I think that is, I don't know if it's a flaw in the philosophy of libertarianism, but it is a flaw in the mindset of many individual libertarians. This idea of, I'm the rugged individual, I'm going to go it alone, I'm going to take care of myself. You can do that, and people can do that. People can go buy a cabin in the woods, be self-sufficient, live on their own, and I fully support anyone who would prefer to live that way. But the fact is, we are humans, and we're social creatures, and we need each other. And most of us need other people. We need family, we need friends, we need community. And I think, one of the greatest things about the world we live in right now is that it's easier to find that community than ever.
Yeah, man. Wow. There's a lot there. I agree with that, and definitely agree with Terrence McKenna. Somehow I must have missed that message because I was working last night. But it's amazing, though, that while these opportunities exist like no other time in human history, when you look around at just society in general, I mean, one would have to think that very few people are taking advantage of that opportunity, right? That people seem en masse to be very detached and very lacking in meaning and purpose and community and society, right? That yes, like you and I and many others recognize the opportunities here to basically create the community that you want. Especially with COVID kind of exacerbating this sort of national divorce. Even if the country literally doesn't split up, it's probably going to geographically split up. But man, are there a lot of people who just are trying to fill that God-shaped hole in their heart with these materialist ideas, and they're not taking advantage of that opportunity. And that's really sad. It actually, I think, technology has helped the remnant get where we need to be, and it's really hurt, I think, most people. It's really taken the soul out of society, which, in a way is maybe another sign of gatekeeping, because it sort of gives you that you can sort of spot the people with the aura around them that have seized on the opportunity, because they're so easy to spot in this like just group of sheep wandering around with these meaningless lives, or wearing 7 masks on their face or something. Like, it's so easy to spot. So yeah, I that's interesting. I hadn't really listened to a lot of Terrence McKenna, but he's right. And I wish more people would take advantage of that, because it's an opportunity that we've never had.
Yeah, it helps to I'm not telling people what to do. It doesn't hurt to munch on a piece of fungus when you before you listen to Terrence McKenna. But that's just my experience. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so much to unpack here. I want to focus on the one phrase you used here, the God-shaped hole in your heart. So, because for me, I think you've said something along these lines, that libertarianism, I think you've actually said, I've heard the phrase libertarian has an atheism problem. I think you might have said the phrase libertarianism is an atheism problem, or something along those lines. But for many years, most of my life, I'd say most of my adult life, I was definitely considered myself an atheist. And I can definitely say that libertarianism became my religion. Being a Ron Paul person became my religion. It's what I was a zealot about. It's what I had to push upon people. It became my identity for a long time in many ways. And I can now kind of see, as I don't subscribe to any particular religion, but I've definitely embraced the concept of spirituality in the last couple of years. And I've been on my own exploratory journey. And I've talked about that in a few other podcasts. But I think that I think we all have this hole to fill somewhere. And if it's not filled by some kind of spirituality, some kind of connection to something beyond here, then it's going to be filled by something else. And that something else might be, it might be crack. It might be wearing 7 masks. It could be so many different things. But I think that you can find this consistently. You can find when someone is getting really overzealous about something, there's a decent chance that they don't have that part of them to it. So I'm curious how your own journey has gone in that regard. Were you raised religious? When did that really become a more important part of your life, and how's that always factored in?
Well, I was I don't want to say I was raised Roman Catholic, but I definitely, we went to church and I went to Catholic school K through 8. When I graduated high school, my father told me that the reason he agreed to have me go to Catholic school, or to be involved in Catholicism, was so that I'd have something to reject when I got older instead of him. And he was begrudgingly a deist, maybe, I don't know, or he was a philosophy professor, or mythology, like humanities and stuff. It was kind of hard to tell where he landed on all that stuff. But as somebody who's just sort of generally built to rebel, I would have said all I knew of religion was Roman Catholicism growing up, and I just adamantly rejected it. This is stupid. This is silly. I don't, I wouldn't have even known what an atheist was. I just thought it was all dumb.
Was that just like a gut reaction to you? Like, this just feels like, people feeding me a line of bullshit.
You know what? I don't even think I took it that far. I just wanted to play sports. Like, I just didn't want to do any of that stuff. It just seemed like a lot of control, unnecessary control, and an unnecessary work. I did read like a lot of occult literature or mystic literature when I got kind of in my high school years. And I found that stuff.
What are we talking here? A little Aleister Crowley or what?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. Crowley, The Golden Dawn, Israel Regardie. Yeah, absolutely. I read the, Kabbalistic texts and Sufi Islam and a lot of those things way back then. We're talking like over 20 years ago. And I found that stuff very fascinating, but I didn't explore it in the way that I've explored it the last year and a half, which is trying to figure out, why human beings act the way that we act. And that's been a lot of like anthropology studies, sociology studies, religious studies, and really looking at like the Bible exegetically and trying to figure out, what was it written for? Why was it written the way it was written? Why do human beings seem to have this need to gravitate toward worship? Why? because and then I would look at like the new atheists, and the new atheists are a reaction to Protestant fundamentalism, which is a reaction to rational deism, which is a reaction to the church around like the Middle Ages, which is a reaction to the Dark Ages, which is a reaction to the fall of the Roman Empire, which is a react, you know what I mean? And working myself back through history, through this like backwards Hegelian dialectic, trying to figure out how we got here. And it seems like the rational facts and logic people would look at the Incas or the Aztecs or the ancient Egyptians or somebody like that and call them backwards tribalistic animals, or even people living in the Middle East now. I mean, I heard that when I was in the military, like animals, just a bunch of animals. And I probably would have agreed with that back then. I mean, I literally went to Afghanistan, and I'm sure I said at some point, like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? And really not look at it the way I'm looking at it now, which is super unfair to them. They're
probably thinking, what's wrong with these people showing up here with all these guns and tanks? And
100% yes, 100% yes. And isn't it interesting, just to sidetrack real quick, isn't it interesting that like there's a branch of the populist right in this country that has more in common with the Taliban than they do with the people running their own government? Like, that is a fascinating, like 20 years ago, I mean, you couldn't have had a bigger divide between the Taliban and the right wing in the country, populist right wing. And now it seems like they're almost kindred spirits.
Yeah. I can see where you guys are coming from now. Okay.
Right. Like, I know that sounds like such a weird thing to say. It sounds weird for me to hear that coming out of my mouth, but
probably get us put on a list somewhere, but that's all right. I'm sure I'm on a few.
Like it's just trying to figure out that worship thing out. And when you realize that, all of these atheists or pretend Christians or, people who follow Christianism, I think is a Vin Armani word, that, Fauci becomes the high priest, the mask becomes like your rosary beads, the vax become the jab. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that if you're on YouTube. The thing you put in the thing is sort of like the baptism. And so all of these sacraments, all of these kind of ways that religion work, they still play themselves out in a world that rejects God. Right. So I look at it and I go, I don't know if God's real. I have no idea. There's no way I could ever conceptualize God because I can't live outside of it and look in and call it something. So I think there's like I guess you maybe take Pascal's wager and you err on the side of the road that takes you toward structure and order and happiness, and veer away from the road that takes you to chaos and disorder. And you realize that seems to have been, throughout all of human history, the reason for all of these religious texts or these religious rituals that people had to go through. It was to keep them on a path that made them strong and determined and fruitful in a very cold and brutal world. And since the Enlightenment, we have lost that because we have tried to rationalize ourselves to the truth. And whether or not there actually is a truth, trying to rationalize yourself to it seems to be a really bad way to have a productive society, as we're seeing it collapse into total degeneracy and disorder.
All right, guys, before we wrap up here, I got to let you know about one of our great sponsors, our longtime sponsors at Lorenzotti, Italy. If you are a fan of coffee, if you like a nice fresh cup of joe to wake up in the morning as I do, you're going to want to check out our friends at Lorenzotti, Italy. They deliver fine, premium Italian coffees right to your door in these nice little tins that look so wonderful sitting on your counter there. And if that weren't all enough, these guys are great libertarians. They are Patreon supporters of this show. They are absolutely worthy of your support. If that all wasn't enough, these guys do more than just sell coffee. They also help other entrepreneurs set up their own coffee businesses, help them acquire equipment, acquire financing, everything they need to start their own coffee business, start their own coffee shops. So you definitely want to check them out for that reason if that's something that's been on your mind. Either way, just fantastic people at Lorenzotti, Italy. Amazing people, fantastic people. You'll want to support them if you're fans of the show. Heck, even if you're not, if you're listening to this by accident, check them out anyway. They have great coffee. Lorenzotti, Italy. You can find them at lorenzotti.coffee. That's LORENZOTTI.coffee. And you do not want to forget your Lions of Liberty listener discount. Just use discount code ROAR for 10% off your order. Let's see. There's a lot of directions to go here. I think.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's perfect. I'd rather have a lot of directions than not enough directions to go. When I hit a wall, I'm like, oh, I don't know what to say anymore.
I've spent so many hours. I feel like just, going through this on my show that I'm distilling it into like a 5-minute clip is it's very difficult to do because they're really big ideas that you're asking, and maybe I'll try to work in the future on trying to nail that down to a clip worthy sentence or two.
When I think what a lot of atheists might say to this is they'd say, well, okay, you don't know that God's real, so you don't really know if this stuff is true or what have you. So, and you're suggesting that over the lifespan of human civilizations, that maybe these stories or mythologies or spirituality, whatever you might want to call it, maybe it has created order in certain societies, but just because of that doesn't make it right. It could still be untrue, and it's not good to delude yourselves and to give yourself some kind of false veil. And we'd always, try to only grasp what we can see, what we know is true, and we shouldn't be just going to tell people stories just to tell them stories to act better. That's kind of my summary of what I might have said 5 years ago, maybe, but something to that respect. How can you reject rationality and logic as the basis for everything? How can you accept something that you can't really quantify?
Right, because I realize that the inevitable religious aspect of anything is going to occur anyway. Right? Atheists have their own religion. They just don't want to call it that, but it follows all the same cycles and patterns of every other actual named religion. So seeing that, Enlightenment atheism or, deism or something like that, it is its own version of a religion. They just don't have a God, right? So if you have a religion based solely around yourself, I mean, I don't think that that's going to be very beneficial to society. I mean, I think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing that play out right now. So, yeah, can I prove it? No. Do I believe it? Yeah, because I think it's a better thing to believe in than the other thing, right? If I just feel like the path of order is something worth having faith in, and the path to disorder is not worth having faith in. And if they would like to have faith in the path of disorder, more power to them. We're just not going to move on the same path, and we're going to find ourselves probably at loggerheads at some point. No, I don't know, and I don't care. Right? It's all about the story. If the story works, if the story gets you to where you want to go, and people want to call that being deluded, whatever, man. If it gets me to a good place, then fuck you.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely say when I really became a fervent Ron Paul supporter, 2007, 2008, I had been reading his writing for years. So I was primed at the pump when he announced he was running for president and then actually got on TV, the Rudy Giuliani moment, yada, yada, yada. I definitely didn't have my own I didn't have anything I worshiped in life, really. I kind of just, I had nothing really. I was just going through life, going to my job, going out to the bar. I had friends. That was my life, but I didn't have anything I believed in necessarily, and that became the thing I believed in. And I can see, looking back, that that's what filled the hole for me. Ron Paul became my religion, and maybe we can argue that any religion or any kind of spiritual path might have its own set of delusions, and maybe that's true. But I was probably deluding myself too into thinking, supporting Ron Paul for president in 2008, and I don't regret it. I mean, it was a great time. What can I say? And it's a time I had to go through. But that was my God in a way. Not Ron Paul necessarily, but the Ron Paul movement. Seeing this thing flourish, whatever this thing is, that was my mission in life. That was what I was. That's what I was a preacher for. That's what I was an evangelist for. So even as I'm sitting there thinking I'm an atheist, well, I was certainly fervently believing in something, and something captured me. And I think you're right. Like no matter what we might believe or want to believe about what human Justin, my friend Justin Campbell, who does all our promo clips, he made a comment here that I'll post. He says humans aren't rational or logical by nature, and I think that's one of the hardest things for many of us, especially people like me and probably like you, that like we consider ourselves, or at least I have considered myself, very irrational, very illogical, and we certainly have those tools in our arsenal. We're able to use those in limited circumstances, but to act like we're acting rationally or logically, that's a delusion too. To think that humans act that way. We don't. We do what we want for some reason, and then we go back and create a logic that connects it. So we can say, oh yeah, I took this trip because I XYZ reason, and I spent the money because it made sense because of these reasons. Well, in reality, you just wanted to go take that trip, and then you went back and filled in the blanks and made all the reasons. So we rationalize ourselves into thinking we're rational, but it doesn't take long of looking into human psychology and human anthropology and all this to see like humans don't really act rationally. So again, whether you want to accept that or not doesn't change that it's true. Whether you want to accept that there's a God-filled hole in everyone's heart doesn't really change that it's true. And we can see that it's true by looking at how people act and looking at how civilizations kind of unfold. And that's definitely been an area that I've become fascinated in. And you also dedicated like a series of podcasts to looking at the Bible. So maybe we can dig more specifically. And I don't think you're saying it has to be a specific religion or a specific text necessarily here, but for you, looking through the Bible has been something that has really, I think, opened your eyes to a lot of things. And I even years ago, I started to get into Jordan Peterson's Bible series, and that taught me to look at it a different way, at least a way on a higher level than, oh, this is just some book that was written to control people, that the same atheist bullshit line that I said for much of my life. And I can now realize, well, even whether it's just stories or just mythology, there's meaning there. And maybe it's not everyone's cup of tea, but there's certainly meaning there, and it's certainly more than just a dumb book. So what are some of the takeaways that you have just from really doing a very, very deep dive, a series of deep dives on the Bible?
Well, I chose the Bible because it was the book I was the most familiar with that other people would be familiar with. I mean, it seems pretty obvious, probably the most recognized book ever in human history. And I had a really good friend that was telling the story in a way that I thought was very entertaining, and so it just made for a really good mix for that series. But as far as my general concept, I mean, I wouldn't call myself a Christian. I mean, I do Christian stuff, but I wouldn't label myself that. I think there's something to. Are you familiar with like capital T traditionalism? Something like I'm going to name two people that just because I think the names might be familiar to people, like Alexander Dugan or Steve Bannon maybe would like call themselves a traditionalist, and not the political realm, but essentially it's the idea that basically every world religion, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, that they're all kind of tapped into a part of the larger truth. They've all kind of found their little inroad into something that is completely not 100% comprehensible. And by looking at different religions and how they've worked out their rituals and their traditions and practices, you can kind of move yourself closer to this ethereal or eternal truth. And I think that's a really interesting idea, that because if you look at them, they're all trying to achieve the same thing. They're just doing it in different ways, and they all kind of sprouted up. I mean, except for Christianity and Islam, like a lot of the world religions, Taoism is another one, right? Like they all kind of sprung up independent of each other, and yet they're all trying to seek the same thing. Even like astrological symbols or whatever. Like they're all trying to achieve the same goal. So I think that probably has more truth to it than just saying like, Judaism is the way, like fundamental Islam is the way. But one of the distinctions that I would make is it seems to me, and I've said this a few times on shows, that Eastern Orthodox Christianity has found, at least for our particular conversation, the best life hack, or maybe it's gotten further into that ethereal void or eternal energy than the other ones. And maybe that's why it becomes so appealing to people at this particular stage in history, because it just works better to get to that place than a lot of the other vehicles, a lot of the other religions. And I haven't explored Buddhism or Hinduism as deeply as I'd like to, but I think their Eastern Orthodox Christianity seems to be much more connected to that than it is to Roman Catholicism or Judaism.
That's really interesting that you say that, because Buddhism and Hinduism are, in some ways, some people wouldn't even call Hinduism a religion necessarily. It's more like a series of traditions and stories that become loosely connected in some ways, but more like a way of life, I guess. But it's at that those are the religions that I have become the most fascinated with and connected to, while at the same time I've found myself relating to, and I don't know, spiritually connecting with many people who practice that more of that Eastern Orthodoxy. People like you, people like Vin Armani. I mean, that is Cyprian. My apologies. That is, I find myself, and I don't subscribe to Buddhism or Hinduism either. There's religions I've really become immersed in a lot more, and practices I've become immersed in a lot more, and ones that I felt that connection to. And it's really interesting. I've never heard anyone make that direct connection, but it's one that I've personally experienced.
Yeah, it's I'd like to do it more. I mean, I feel like I'm not going to ever pick one. I don't think I'm ever going to call myself a Buddhist or something. But there's definitely something beautiful you can pick out of all of these things. There's nothing beautiful you can pick out of the Church of Woke. So if people are looking for a distinction between a materialist atheist religion and something that actually has real meaning and purpose and spiritual significance for their lives, I think that's probably the easiest, like, clippy way to state it, right? Like, Fauci will not be remembered in 2,000 years as a hero, and if he is, we're fucking toast.
Oh yeah, we're in trouble if that's the case. I want to circle back and bring this conversation back into libertarianism, back into how this sort of journey you've been on here through, creating your more individual liberty in your own life, sort of exploring a lot of these religious concepts. How has that strengthened your sort of the way you've, I don't know, I wouldn't say left libertarianism necessarily, however you want to put it, but has made you see libertarianism as a political philosophy devoid of God, devoid of the spiritual, that is purely a materialist philosophy? How has it seen you look at that differently, and why do you think that it's not even necessary to have if you maybe have more of a connection to that spiritual side of things?
Well, I guess we'd have to look at what libertarianism is, right? And I know there's a bunch of different ways to define this, but for the sake of your question, this is probably the best one. It's a return to, in my head, a return to some sort of base level classical liberalism with a newer understanding of economics kind of worked into it. And this is only something that's like 70 years old, because prior to Rothbard, libertarianism and anarchism is generally all left-wing stuff. So he basically switched this around to turn it into a right-wing ideology that's supposed to go back to some idea of classical liberalism. The problem with liberalism, as a few people, I'll say Matt Erickson's been really good at kind of defining this. I might not do it justice or say it the same way he would say it, but I think liberalism in general is just a mistake, right? I know how it came about, like the Cartesian kind of philosophy and the evolution of liberalism, but liberalism also gave birth to communism and socialism and a bunch of other really bad ideas. So I don't know if returning to the start of that, or a more fundamentalist idea of it, is a really good idea in and of itself, right? I don't think it goes back far enough. So maybe if you could snap like libertarianism into effect all over now, you might end up like something like 1776 America, something like that. And that, I don't know if that really fixes anything, because then 250 years later, you're right back here again. So that's kind of my sort of issue with it.
All right.
Like you might prolong it a couple hundred years, but I think you're going to be right back in the same place. I would think the way to go is to just go back further than that and try to figure out how, in this modern, technologically advanced world, we can incorporate the ideas, the rituals, and the practices of the ancients into this, and try to form some kind of a hybrid society where we still get the ability, like you said, to connect with anybody on the planet at any time, but also don't lose a sense of what we are literally biologically programmed to be. And so that's kind of where my head is at. I think in general, libertarianism kind of doesn't go back far enough. Now, that doesn't mean for me that the idea of individual liberty and economic freedom is necessarily the same thing, because I think you can go back to ancient times and you can see those two ideas play out over and over again. I think they can be gotten to separately from like this political idea or this socioeconomic idea of libertarianism.
Yeah, and I think that maybe the ideal in some way is when we really embrace the spiritual, whatever that might be for every individual or any community or whatever works for people. Because the tool of technology, it's a tool. It can go either way. It could probably be used to completely separate us from the spiritual. It can be used to completely disconnect us, even while it's connecting us. Or if we can embrace that while using that technology to further connect, to further build communities, both physical and virtual around the globe, then maybe that is the best kind of direction we can try to go or try to push people in.
Yeah, I think so. And it also helps you kind of see how, the Faucis of the world, they use, and I think they know they do this, but probably not for the reasons that I know they do it. They're using mystical techniques to control you anyway, right? Those techniques go all the way back to like the high priests in biblical times. So it's not like we've lost the ability to do this. We just have to harness that power for good and realize that these other lizard people, these non-humans that are racking all of this power over you, that they're using it for evil. And use those terms, use good and use evil. Don't be scared of that, right? Embrace this. Like you don't have to go full on David Icke, right? But
you can.
But metaphorically, what he's saying makes a lot of sense. I mean, that goes all the way back to the sons of God and daughters of men in Genesis. Like he's invoking that same idea of the giants, of the fallen angels in the lizard people. It's the same story. So even if you want to look at it metaphorically, there's a reason that story is being told, was being told, and needs to be told, right? So that you don't follow these fucking lunatic sociopaths, like, and you recognize what that is as evil, and then embrace the mysticism in your own way, like the messaging and the marketing or the sales or however you want to word mystic into pulling people into something that it develops real meaning and purpose in their life instead of going for those lizard people and that darkness.
Yeah, and I'm honestly not sure the approach should be any different if lizard people in the David Icke sense, or demons, or whatever term people might use, is literal, if they're literally demons or literally lizard people. I'm not sure that would change the approach any from the fact it's just used as a descriptor or a metaphor or whatever to describe the way these people act. And either way, that's what they are. They're lizard people either way. So, I mean, I think either way, it's the same approach is going to be needed with them.
I 100% agree. Let's
just pretend they're lizard people either way. That's more
that's
interesting.
why I've always said, or I've started to say lately, that it's the story that matters. The story matters. That facts and logic don't matter. That if you're hung up on facts and logic and charts and graphs, you don't have a grasp of the story, and you're not going to be able to get where you want to go. It's a trap. It's an absolute trap to get caught in the numbers game, in the logic game. It's all about the story, and it's always the same story. Just it's got different names for the characters, but it's the same story every time.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, God bless my friend Tom Woods. I love what he's done over the years. But for the past year and a half, he's been beating himself over the head and beating putting out all the charts and collecting all the data and showing everybody over and over, look, the mask mandates don't work, the lockdowns don't work. And I'll see him like tweet something exasperated, like, how are these people not seeing this when it's so clear? But that's why, because it doesn't matter. The facts, the logic, the charts, that's not what moves people. That's not what sways people. The effective story does. And the people that aren't being swayed by the charts and the graphs, like people like me and you that already might agree with that point of view, we see that and it confirms what we already believe. So that works for us. It's good red meat for us, but it's not swaying anybody that's bought a completely different narrative because they've bought into a religion, and you're not going to show someone a fact or chart to explain to them why Jesus isn't real or why God isn't real. So why would you expect anything different when dealing with the Church of Woke or the lizard people or whatever you want to call them?
1,000% right. And Tom has done, I mean, probably the best collection of work on this of anybody I can think of. And it's incredible how if you were dealing with people who were not locked into a religion, that it would be it'd be over. It would have been over a long time ago.
Slam dunk. This thing would be done.
Slam dunk. I mean, it's all
Be
correct.
done a year and a half ago.
But yes, you are right. If you go to go to Tibet and sit down with the monks or the Dalai Lama and just show him some charts, and he's going to go, oh yeah, no, actually let's walk down from the mountain. We'll go to Walmart. I had this all wrong. So yes.
What am I doing in this temple? This is, geez, you're right. I had this
You
all
said
wrong.
it exactly right. So it's when libertarians, right, can break themselves of this trap and start to tell the story or their story or any fucking story at this point, then maybe there'll be some inroads to get people to actually listen. But if you're going to try to, like you said, try to beat people over the head or beat yourself over the head with facts and logic, you're really just going to end up going insane. It's not going to accomplish anything. And like you said, it's preaching to the choir. The choir already knows, like you and I already know that those facts and those charts and graphs are true. It's good to have like on a file on your computer if you ever need to bring it up. But you want to battle God with that? I don't think it's going to work.
Right. Well, Adam, you're going to be at least continuing to tell your version of the story on your show. You're Talking Over Me. So why don't we at least make sure that the people that have taken the time to watch this entire interview or listen to this whole interview have gotten to this point of it. Let's try to make sure they can type it the right way and search for it the right way. So why don't you let everybody know how they can find your show? You're Talking Over Me, and feel free to plug away on anything else you want to get out there. If you want to give your Twitter out, I don't know, you might have mixed thoughts about the Twitter thing now, but feel free to plug away on anything you got.
All right, so it's You're Talking Over Me. It's YER talking with no G over me, spelled correctly. And there's an exclamation point, but I don't think it matters. So You're Talking Over Me with Adam Patrick. You can get it on any podcatcher, YouTube, anywhere you get anything. Or you can go to yourtalkingoverme.com, and that's got a player on there as well. And you can actually I think you can close the phone and it still plays, like if you're paying for YouTube or whatever. And Twitter is I am Adam Patrick. I'm absolutely happy to talk to anybody. If you're an asshole, I'm not even going to respond. I'm really not. I have a life. I have a beautiful family. I have 2 wonderful dogs. I work for a living. I'm not a Twitter junkie. I'm on it 15 minutes a day tops. I literally time myself. So I like to use that time wisely. And I'm starting a Substack.
I got to start doing that. I got to start timing myself because I have this problem. If I see a notification, like something in my brain can't not see what it is. So I gotta stop.
It's one of those things where you have to just pick like 5 minutes 3 times a day and try to get it all done then. Or like I do, I wait till I'm done with work. I got out of work at like 1 a.m. and I just do all of it then. And and I'm hoping to start a Substack called Accordium at some point. And I have a whole bunch of writing on my computer. I just have to edit it and put it up there. So if anybody wants to check that out at some point, substack.com/accordium, ACCORDIUM. Hopefully there'll be something there of value for you to read. And I think that's it.
All right, Adam. Well, it's been an absolute blast talking to you. We will communicate more as the days and years go on, I'm sure. But in the meantime, keep up the great work. Keep on.
I really appreciate it, Mark, man. Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Live long and live free.